What's up, guys? We are back with another Super 7 Ultimates Turtles Wave 5 review, taking a look at the other big bad for the line. We've got KRANG up today, and this, of course, is our original KRANG in the Bubble Walker. We haven't yet gotten to monstrous android KRANG, but I'm really excited to take a look at this guy just because of what's in this box. We got multiple KRANG figures, really, and the Bubble Walker. Of course, it comes in our standard packaging for the line, so that sort of trapezoidal shape with a slipcover. He's a bad guy, so he gets the foot purple coloration, and then you've got the KRANG manhole cover on the front, Turtles logo, of course, on the back. Pop that slipcover off, and you can see both of our KRANGs there in all their brainy glory. Turtles logo down there on the bottom. You've got your sort of blue-purple brick motif on this packaging since he's a bad guy, and then the back of the box, of course, gives us our bio. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Super 7 Ultimates KRANG figure. I have really been looking forward to this guy, not because I'm like a diehard KRANG fan or anything. I mean, he's KRANG, he's cool, he's a brain. But we have our Turtles. We need to finish our core bad guys, and he finishes the core bad guys for, you know, for all intents and purposes. You got your Shredder, you got your Bebop and Rocksteady. We've got our KRANG, well, at least, you know, the regular version of KRANG. We haven't got an android KRANG yet. And unfortunately, this guy is kind of problematic, which is really weird. I was not expecting this one to be the one that had problems with articulation. If anything, I expected him to be very much under-articulated, but if in many ways, and it feels weird saying this, he is over-articulated. He does a lot more than I would have ever expected, which is a good thing, but it also seems to be something that's sort of caused a problem too. So let's see what he can do, see how he moves around. I'm going to take him out of the walker for just a sec, because he, of course, is two parts. He's the brain and he's the walker. So the brains, there are two, of course, they do have articulation. The tentacles swivel, there's a ball peg in there, and then they hinge also in and out, and they are removable and swappable between the two KRANGs. So you get two different versions of KRANG, two different expressions, essentially, and then they made the tentacles interchangeable, and they all work in the walker. Like, they can all fit through the little, you know, slits on the side there. Where things begin to be problematic, as you can see, is the stability of the walker itself. It's just really odd in terms of how it sort of holds itself together, basically. And it may be a situation where KRANG is possibly too heavy, too, because he feels to be almost as heavy as the walker itself. This is a very, very solid KRANG compared to a rather spindly walker, which is normal. It's what it should be. But, you know, the original one had a hole in it and took out a lot of that plastic. There's no hole in the bottom of this KRANG, so he is solid. Now, the arms, they have a ball peg here, so you've got hinge in and out. Well, it's not hinge, but it's movement in and out, and then you've got rotation. They've got these really, really weird lateral elbows, which is pretty crazy, but it allows him to sort of, you know, reach to the side, basically. You've got rotation, and then you've got hinges at the wrists also. So, you know, fairly normal arms, except for the fact that he has the crazy robo elbows. The legs are where the stability issues, of course, come into play. So the quote-unquote hips here hinge in and out. They hinge in really, really, really far, like way more than I think they need to. And then they rotate also. This is our first point where it seems to be kind of loose, because if you get him wrong, he'll just sort of fall forward. And then you've got a hinge at the knee, and it's a 90-degree hinge, and it also goes forward a little bit. This is also a little bit loose. It's looser than the hips. There is a rotation point here as well. And when I'm saying loose, I'm not saying that like they're going to flop all over the place, but they will give a lot easier than you will expect them to. You've got hinge, which is really just hinge up at the ankle. Well, whatever you want to call this thing. And there's also a rocker here too, but it's only going to work so well because the back part of the foot does not rock. It's only like, I guess you would say, a toe rocker, toe hinge and toe rocker. So they do spin a little bit, and it works when you get him kind of like jutting out to the side. It helps to stabilize him for sure. But getting him to stand is kind of a task. Like, that's really what it comes down to. It can be cumbersome at times. It can be annoying at times. Once you get him, like, he'll probably stand like this just fine for I don't know how long. He stood for well more than 48 hours before I even got to this review. The journey from pose to, you know, from posing him to actually keeping him in place is where things become a problem, because he just has a lot more going on here than I really expected. And I'm not quite sure exactly where the problem comes from. It seems like it's part at the hips, part at the knees, and then in some ways it seems like it's just the fact that he is maybe too heavy and so much of his weight is sitting in front of the hips that it wants to bring the whole thing down sometimes, especially because you've got these arms on there also. So he does have a lot of articulation. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot going on here when it comes to how they put him together. But there's definitely something going on with his stability and the ability, really, to easily pose this guy. Now, of course, all that said, on the flip side, the aesthetics, I think they absolutely nailed it. I love the way this guy looks. There is probably going to be some divisiveness on that front because they didn't necessarily use the exact copy of the Playmates Walker to do this because, well, he's like metallic silver. So all of this stuff is super, super metallic and really, really bright and shiny, and the vintage one just isn't. That's not really a problem for me because I kind of like it. Like, you're either going to like it or you're not. And I think, and we've kind of known that it was going to be this way, but I really like it. It's super, super metallic, and I mean, it makes sense. It's a robot walker. There's no reason that it has to be dark. It can be shiny and bright and vibrant, and there's a lot of paint on it. I mean, there's all this metallic all over him. Tons of sculpt in the robo arms, even paint in there. You've got paint all over the legs. And really, I mean, when I say this guy is shiny, he is absolutely just shiny. He's probably the most metallic thing we've gotten in this line right now. I mean, he's definitely up there with Metalhead for sure when it comes to, Metalhead's torso. Maybe a little bit more shiny than that. See, he just wants to lurch forward. So you got to kind of watch the weight distribution. It's got to be something with that. But they've got all this like detail on the back. All these bits and bobs and doodads and robo gadgetry, all of it's painted, all of it's really well sculpted, all of the sculpt and all of the paint is really, really clean, really crisp, and the dome on this is very clear, so I've not had any issues with that. It doesn't seem like it's going to have, well, at least for now, it doesn't have any issues with fogging up. The vintage one often would fog up relatively easily, and KRANG himself, I love this little guy. I mean, he's a big, big brain, but I think he looks fantastic. All the veins in there, let's just take him out for a second. Let's take him out. The veins all over the brain are, that sort of indigo color, which look tremendous. Tons and tons of detail there. All of that gnarly, nasty, folds in the brain. There's a lot of sculpt, a lot of detail in this little guy. And then, of course, you've got those striking yellow eyes. And then you've got this mouth, and this is obviously the one that's meant to look like the vintage one, and he's got that sort of smile like some, like a kid on picture day who doesn't really know how to smile on command. So he's just sort of like, yeah, take my picture. But this is awesome. Like, I really like it. For all my criticism with the articulation, I am over the moon with how this thing looks. If it wasn't for the articulation, I would probably go as far as to say that this would be the star of the wave, because everything about the brains, like the brains alone do it for me, which is such a weird thing to say. The brains alone do it for me, but this guy looks tremendous, and the walker does look fantastic. I love the paint job. I love the finish. I love the sculpt. I love the size because it's not too big, but it's definitely not small. There's just so much about the look and the feel of this to be really happy with. It just gets, unfortunately, brought down quite a bit because, well, it's just kind of janky at times to get him to stand up normally. And since he is so weird, he's an odd figure. There's no way around it. He's a brain in a walker. We need to do a size comparison just to give an idea of what he is compared to the rest of the stuff in this line. So he's about, in the walker, of course, he's about the same height as a turtle. He is not as tall as basically the rest of the line. So, Shredder is a good head-ish taller than him. And then, of course, we've got, we'll say Bebop and Rocksteady as well, just to round out the folks that are going to be probably on your shelf with him. So let's move Raph aside. And here he is with Rocksteady. And let's move Shredder aside. And here he is with Bebop. So of course they're going to tower over him. They're massive figures in every right. But this gives you a good idea of exactly how big he is. He's not really any smaller than the smallest figures in the line. He's just a very, very different shape. And of course, if you take the brain out, he's going to be really small. But the walker does add a lot of presence for this figure. Now, as far as accessories goes, this set in number is light on accessories compared to most Ultimates. But what we get here, I'm really, really happy with. So to start with, we do get his gun, and this has the big cable that starts there, and it kind of plugs in underneath the walker. And he has 2 gripping trigger finger-ish hands on him in the box, and the gun fits perfectly in both. It has more, a lot more of that super metallic paint more of that purple accent. You've got a little red trigger down there. It looks fantastic. I'm really happy with it. It's also really big. It's also going to extend a lot more weight in front of the walker, so you are going to have to pose him appropriately, maybe not as goofily as this. He's easier to pose once you sort of get your hands on him. We do get some hands, speaking of hands, and some of them are kind of interesting. I'm not really sure. Like these, I thought at first that these were trigger finger hands, but they're not. These are just like style posy gripping hands. You get a set of these, because the hands he comes with are actually kind of weird, the assortment. He comes with a right pointing hand, which I'm very happy with. I do like this quite a bit. I love a good pointing finger hand because it's very useful. And then we've got a left fist, and all of these are lateral hinges. So you get 4 extra hands, which I guess is probably enough for a KRANG. I don't know that I truly think I'm missing anything here. What really sells this one is the fact that, you know, this is maybe not nearly as big as a lot of other Ultimates. I mean, it's definitely not as big as some of the bigger ones, Bebop, Rocksteady, Muckman, Ray Fillet, you know, stuff like that. So like I said, they gave us an entirely different KRANG. They give us another one. So we get the little tripod, and we get this KRANG here, which I really like this one. You know, this is like an alt head basically. So this is their take on KRANG. So you can set him down. I mean, he does fit in the walker, and then this one also will fit on the tripod, but you've got another KRANG here, and you've got the same articulation. So we've got, you know, the removable tendrils here. And these are pretty easy to take out. I'll also note that the hands are super easy to swap on him. I had no issues like I did with Leo here. So you've got this one, and he is, you know, exclaiming, or he is super happy. He looks incredibly happy about something, killing turtles or making mutants. But he's got different tendrils. So of course these are asymmetrical. They're not the same on both sides, and they will again swap with this one. And just the overall look, the feel. I mean, it's a big bulbousy brain. Love that teeth and that tongue in there. Just a lot of detail. Again, I'm really happy with the way these KRANGs look, and the fact that they gave us 2 just to really pad the set out. I mean, this is a good way to do it. Now you've got 2 different options and 2 ways to have it. You know, if you want, you can have 2 KRANGs on your shelf, and you're gonna be sitting pretty with 2 different KRANGs. So I'm really happy with this inclusion. I think he looks great. And again, I really love the fact that they have the interchangeable parts. So yeah, overall, I'm happy with KRANG. You know, I said he probably could have been my favorite. But these articulation problems, they're really hard to ignore on this figure because he's just hard to pose. Like, that's really what it comes down to. He's just hard to pose. Making him stand and being stable is actually pretty easy. Once you find that sweet spot, he's going to stay. But getting him there is the problem. The act of actually making him do what you want him to do without flipping over or just slumping to the ground is definitely annoying, and it's very, very difficult to actually achieve a really good pose without putting in a lot more work than you might want to. Beyond that, he of course does look tremendous. You know, from a design perspective, again, just like the rest of this wave, they truly killed it. He looks fantastic. I love the choice of the metallic for the walker. I love the sculpt and the paint applications on the actual KRANGs themselves, and it's cool to finally complete that core team. And he does come, of course, with some solid accessories, and I love getting 2 KRANGs also. But it's hard to overlook the fact that there definitely are some articulation problems that I really, really wish were not at all present on this guy. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super 7 Ultimates TMNT Wave 5 KRANG. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.